this meeting. Thank you for reminding me of that. And let's see. If you do, yeah, so if you do have questions, if you could ideally ask them in audio so we can create a dialogue. This is not so much a webinar, but more of a meetup. This is our second meetup that we've had, and we hopefully will have many more down the road. I just want to mention a couple new things that are coming into BetterForms platform. I'm not going to really go into the details just yet, but these will all be coming out over the next month. Our login authentication pages will become a form. That means you can add additional styling and design it any way you want, just based on all the other pages in BetterForms. We're going to be adding a SVG seating plan. This is a really, really neat thing. You've seen these when you purchase tickets at a concert, where you highlight the seats and then you can pick the cost of the seats and so on and see which seats are taken. So we're going to be adding that, and it's actually works pretty neat. It's going to be pretty neat little element. Controllable navigation, that's something that's going to be in the next release. That means the navigation menus, you can add visibility, and that allows you to do things like if you have an admin user, you can show different navigational screens versus maybe just an average user. And the last one, and this is a really big one, it's forms in, that says on here, but it's a typo, forms in modals. So that those are would be the equivalent of a FileMaker card window. Those are, that gives us the ability to have effectively pop-ups and context-related things, and they act as a totally separate page, just like a card window would do in FileMaker. So that's some things that are coming up. These are all coming out over the next month because to meet some deadlines for that. We're going to jump right in, and we have a few guest speakers today. Dan Rosenstein, he's from Toronto. His company is Rad Effect, and he's a developer. And I'm going to just bring him on here, and he's going to be speaking first. Dan was actually customer number 001, and he was part of the reason why we started developing BetterForms in the direction, in the flexible direction it is. Between him and two other use cases that all kind of happened at the same time. So Dan, I'm just going to make you a presenter. I think you're already an organizer as it is.
Hey,
How are you today?
If you guys can hear me, then I think we're good.
Yeah, I can. So we should be good. So Dan, you're kind of user number 001.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't
Yeah,
know if that's a good thing, because you've put up with a lot of headaches and a lot of things along the way. The original platform didn't have any user interface, and you sort of started using it then.
Yeah, it was a bumpy road in the beginning. Thanks for the hand holding that we got from you guys. I mean, from you. Yeah, it's been a pretty interesting experience. So first of all, Charles, thanks for BetterForms. I think it's a great tool. We've already completed 2 full-scale projects, which I'll describe in a few minutes. I think the great thing about BetterForms for me so far is the ability to integrate with complex FileMaker solutions. So I'll just start with 2 use cases that we had with BetterForms.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so first one is a summer camp. We have about 1,200 families with about I think 2,000 kids, and we had to solve a problem of registration. So this camp are using FileMaker for the last few years, and they developed their own solution. Since they're in-house and they're not proper developers, their solution looks a little bit probably like our first solution.
Yeah,
so think that far back.
Developers, as they say.
Yeah, so design doesn't look quite right. Objects aren't sized properly, etc., etc. Colors didn't look very professional, to be honest. They were using WebDirect to handle the registration. which, as we know, is an easy way to do things, but has a few downsides.
Right.
Now, the challenge was getting this very complex solution. There's a lot of logic in their solution, and it was written in an in-house, unprofessional kind of way. Rewriting this from scratch would have cost a lot of money and taken a lot of time. And current solutions, web services, web forms, stuff like that, can't support the amount of logic that these guys have in their
When you say
forms.
current solutions, Dan, do you mean things like the
FileMaker.
form, the online form builders?
Yes. So you can't just take a regular form, even if it does have a little bit of logic. These guys had a lot of logic. So imagine somebody trying to register two kids. Each kid has different preferences. Every time you select something, something else is dependent on it. It's really hard to use a simple form to build something that complex. And we didn't want to rebuild this whole thing from scratch. So we started building it in BetterForms. And now the pros of using what they had is, first, they don't need a rebuild. Second, they could use WebDirect, which is simple. The cons are, first, it was ugly. Second, the licenses for WebDirect were expensive. They had, I think, 10 concurrent connections. And the connections were obviously limited to the number of licenses they had. And the biggest problem was that they had limitations with the browser. So this isn't a controlled environment. It's not a big company that you can say to all the employees, you have to use Google Chrome version 10 plus or whatever. You don't know what they're going to be using. They're going to use a phone. They're going to use an old tablet. They're going to be using different browsers, different versions. And as we know, WebDirect doesn't work with all of these. So that was the main pain point for them. So we built this thing in BetterForms. The outcome was pretty good. I must say, Charles, that I'm still surprised how robust and how flawless this registration
You
process
know what?
went. We
Considering
had,
it was version one, I am not going to lie. I'm a little surprised as well. We actually, when you had told me that last, you sent out an email, I think or maybe this was the second use case. I'm not
that
sure.
was the second one, yeah.
Right. Okay. To I don't know, 6,500 people and 3,000 people registered within the
Yep.
first little bit.
Yep.
That was kind of nice to hear. Now you mentioned about browser compatibility. We did have one issue, I think, with Internet Explorer, which we patched
Yeah,
up.
we did have one issue and you patched it. That was the main issue really we had, but we had that fixed in a day or two, so not a big issue.
Right. How
Uh,
as far as the customer and billing and things like that, how did you approach that? Like, I guess it was kind of hard to price a target or to price that project initially.
yeah, the first project was a bit of a problem. Overall, the amount of time we spent on the first project, I'd say it wasn't too profitable, but it was a learning curve, and we definitely managed to capitalize on that on the second project, which took a lot
Right.
less time,
And
was a
I
lot
should
simpler.
just a quick caveat. At the time, we didn't have a user interface, so you're
Yeah,
effectively using a framework without any UI, which
right.
is a significant difference. And I know you continued to do that for a little while afterwards, and now we're using our cloud UI. But that's a big night and day, I find myself.
Yeah, we didn't have all the tools and all the customization and automation that you have now, and I know that you're working on automating it even further. We had some of it in the second project, which I'll discuss in a minute, but the first one was a little bit rough, bare bones kind of system. But we got it working, and considering the huge amount of logic that we had to incorporate, it was pretty impressive. I'll say,
What types of
yeah,
logic things, Dan, did you have to incorporate? Like you tied some stuff in conditionally on the back end, right? So like if
right.
Mhm.
So one of the differences between this project and a lot of the others is the fact that here we have two levels of tables. We have the parents and we have the kids that relate to the parents. And we had to use objects like list rows and accordion style objects. And the
Or
logic in it was, if one of the kids, needed, I don't know, transportation, then it has to look back at the parents and check if they checked all kinds of things. There's a lot of ifs, and this logic is basically in JavaScript. So I needed to learn, the JavaScript terminology of, how do you do equals or different, and you had to add some custom functions to be able to say summarize the number of yeses or nos for kids of
right.
one
Yeah.
family.
So this was a really interesting use case because we added quite a bit of features because this was sort of in the development phases of BetterForms and didn't really have a clear direction of where it was going to go. It knew what it had to do. Um, so we added things like the ability to add customized JavaScript so that you can do calculations in the client side without having to resort to FileMaker to do that.
Right, plus the visibility logic. So we had to hide and
That's
unhide a
right.
lot of objects according to selections. So with this project, it was a pretty high ROI for the customer. I mean, the project paid for itself within the first year, which we're still in the first year, but it already paid for itself just by the fact that they don't need to buy any WebDirect licenses.
Right.
So that
Yeah,
was a
they can still
pretty
take
big
advantage
thing.
of all the FileMaker stuff that they have existing.
Right. Yeah, I didn't have to rebuild everything, which would have been pretty expensive. So that was one project. Second project was for a gardening franchise. This is one of the largest in Canada. They have about 45 to 50 franchisees around Canada.
Hmm.
And the main issue we had to solve in the beginning was the renewal process. So every season, that's twice a year, they have to send out renewal forms to about 5,000, at least 5,000 to 7,000 clients to renew their contract. This was physically mailed using snail mail. And they'd mail this out. The client, had to get the letter, open it, sign it, and mail it back. And then they had to type it all back into FileMaker in the office. So imagine 5,000 applications arriving more or less at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and you have I don't know, 6, 7 people working on entering data every day. They had to, every season they had 2 weeks where they had to stay overtime, and they had to work until 8 p.m. every night. Overtime is obviously more expensive to pay for as well for the owner, and the staff really hated this because it's not a very nice task, printing out all these envelopes, filling them, and then typing everything back into FileMaker. Obviously, there are errors when you're entering information.
Sure.
So we wanted to automate this and move it online. Again, this client has an extremely complex FileMaker solution. The logic there is pretty complex. Every customer has their own custom contract. The system needs to know what they currently have and say, do you want to renew this, this, and this? And also, using upsell, we want to offer you ABC as an additional service. And then we have to capture the signature, date, time, and browser IP information, stuff like that. So again, since this was the second project we did, it was a lot easier. Plus, we had a lot of tools that we had developed from the first project. Now, in this case, I'll just mention, we didn't want to use logins because we didn't want to force people to have to register to see their contract. So what happens is now the system bypasses the login page, and
Right. So
FileMaker emails them. Yep.
you basically sent out just to preface that, you sent out a URL with a
URL.
permalink
Yep.
or a magic link, and
Yep.
that access the user's authentication.
Right. So BetterForms knows exactly, which customer this is and pulls the right information and shows the right services for this client. And then they just have to tick what they want. They see the payments, next, 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 sign, and finish.
Did
Pretty
you
simple.
incorporate? You don't. How do you manage the payments? You had a back end payment gateway through FileMaker.
Right. So this actually came at a later point. This was the second project we did for this client with BetterForms. This was integrating Moneris, which for those of you who aren't in Canada, is kind of similar to Authorize.net, I suppose, credit card.
Yeah, but the Moneris also has a lot of interact debit processing machines and things like that as well as
Yeah, it's a big company and they have their own API. So we built an integration with FileMaker, and then we added the integration into the final process where they have to pay. So at the last page, they select how they want to pay, by check or by credit card. If they select credit card, some options appear to enter their credit card number, etc. And as soon as they do that, we send a call via FileMaker using our API to Moneris to check that this card is valid and to create a customer profile in the Moneris vault for them, so we can charge them later on. Because we don't want to save the credit card information in FileMaker.
right.
That can cause PCI issues.
Sure. Now,
So
and
we send, yep.
Dan, sorry, I just noticed the other day you said you had talked to me and you said you were working on a new project with the staff from the camp. Did they approach you for that, or is that something that you went out and sort of sought out now that you have another option for them?
Well, yes, they approached me. When I created the first project, I told them that this is a framework, and they said, we're going to need additional forms in the future. And what actually happened was the current project took care of campers registering. What they wanted was also a form for staff that wants to register to send in application forms. Now this requires sending in resumes, etc., all kinds of files they need to submit. Now, since I said that this client actually knows a little bit of FileMaker, and they wanted to be able to create forms themselves. So I showed the clients, how BetterForms works, and they created their own staff registration form in the JSON blob.
I see. I see.
And we actually created the framework to support that form.
Right. So now the customer was actually designing
Building the
part
form.
of their application. That's interesting.
Yep.
Interesting.
So the only thing they have to know is just, they take examples from the form I created originally, and they can copy and paste elements into the new form,
Right.
which is a lot easier than, writing it from scratch.
Unfortunately, some people were asking if we have some screenshots. We don't have any screenshots, or at least we didn't have any things prepared that we can publicly expose. But I believe Eric is going to be showing some a little bit more hands-on demo things. So thank you, Dan. That was great.
Charles, if anyone has questions, they can email me. I'll be happy to answer, give some more information.
Super. Yeah, somebody had asked about the Moneris connection and things like that. So perhaps they can reach out to you. I think if you Google Google Dan's name there and Rat Effect, he comes up somewhere fairly high on the list. So.
Well, hopefully number one.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks again, Dan.
Okay.
I know you have to run off for the weekend.
Yep. Thanks, Charles.
Thank you. We're going to switch over to Dave Pong. Dave Pong's another developer, and he's going to be. Let me just make sure I got you online here.
Charles, I got some slides put together.
Sure. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'll make you the presenter there, Dave.
Can you guys see that?
I sure can. I can anyway.
We're ready to go. Okay, that's good. Eh?
Yeah.
Sorry
So
about
you had just got started with BetterForms just recently, right? About maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, this was very interesting. I see a bunch of names on the list, and it's like old school years of being in the FileMaker community. For all the guys that know me, I guess they haven't seen me around actually recently. I've missed a couple of DEF CONs and stuff. We've been at the pause conferences and stuff. But you know, you'll see where I've been going and stuff, and then you'll sort of get an idea. I got into BetterForms, or actually when Charles actually showed me the first version, it was sort of missing a bunch of things that I thought it needed. And I was working on another platform at the time. And then Charles sent out something recently, and I said, look, show it to me again. He did, and it was something that was perfect for a situation that I was just getting into. So yeah, I just got into this literally in last 6 weeks or something like that. I think, Charles, I can't remember, right? Yeah, so to answer that question, yeah, just really recently. And it's actually a really good platform for the guys that are out there in the community. And I'm going to go over a bunch of things. So I think Charles wanted me to present something because where I'm going with this, he thought it would be a good idea to share.
Yeah, well, this is one of those things that when we were talking, we sort of just kind of touched on software as a service and that kind of concept. And then the next time I talked to you, you had run with that, like, and actually built something, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's turned into something really big. I'm not going to go into the solution because I'm in discussions right now with rolling this out literally North America wide, right? And that's how big this thing's gotten. This is something that you actually couldn't do with FileMaker. There's a number of reasons for it, but Charles's platform hits it because it took care of a bunch of things that we would have had to have dealt with on the FileMaker side of the technology, let's say, that it's just not set up for a couple of reasons, right? And I'll get into it in a sec. So when we talk about like the SaaS model, recurring revenue, right? Really, it's stuff that you're trying to get every month so that you're getting money coming in, right? You know, this could be like web hosting or email hosting, or you know, FileMaker
really kind of a different approach as compared to a regular consulting where we're quoting on a gig or we're working hourly or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So for example, so my next question really is, there's another revenue stream that I'm going to talk about. You know, it's something that you sort of have to think about, but I'll bring this up later at the very end. So the background, again, we're talking about this through this opportunity. A bunch of things that sort of hit me was I get involved in a lot of large scale projects. You know, they're like big custom jobs, right, that I've done in the past. You know, big law firms, enterprise level at the government level, things like that. So there's you know, there's a few of these opportunities. There's a bunch. There's a lot more on the Windows side, let's say, where the guys are used to paying a lot of money for solutions and stuff like that. So with anything that's related to Apple, you know, one of the things that I've done in the past with when I was at FileMaker was I had to go around and deal with all of the Apple stores. So I got to see a lot of customers that, you know, that went into the stores and stuff. You know, you presented these to these customers, you handed these leads off to the different developers and stuff. And then when I left FileMaker, I still had these connections in the stores. So you get out and you talk to these customers, and You know, it's funny. The Apple customers expect it to be simple and low cost. Okay, and I think the mindset comes from going on the App Store, downloading something for 69 bucks, and they expect this app to be 69 bucks. Now, you as a custom developer, you know, it's hard to do something for 69 bucks, right? So a couple of things happened that really opened my eyes. I got into a job where we were starting to develop something in Filemaker Go, and building out a sync component and stuff. And the owners brought in a guy to handle the project. So the first thing the guy did was he said, how come we're not developing this in Android? And I said, because we're using FileMaker for these reasons. You know, you go through all of the reasons that, you know, FileMaker gives you, you know, low cost of development, blah, 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 right? So he went and he said, no, 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 no. You know, there's an issue here because I'm going to be outfitting 150 guys, and 150 guys on iPads is going to be, you know, X amount, where I can bring these guys on $100 Android tablets and blah, blah, blah. So he literally just said, you know, here's your check. We're going to switch the whole development platform to Android. And I was sitting there going, okay, what do you do at this point, right? It's sort of a lost thing. That freaking really opened my eyes to the limitations of FileMaker and the markets that you can actually hit with it. Okay, so when that happened, I started to look at a lot of different things that could address these other issues. Okay, especially in the corporate, or let's say these larger opportunity markets and stuff like that. And just like Dan brought up about the browsers and stuff like that, when you get out there into these large deployments, you can't control some of these different environments, right? So you have to have a platform that allows you to be able to address these customers, right? And you can't control some of these things. So you got to have something that's a little bit different. So when we're getting into this, one of the things that I bring up is, you know, are you an independent developer? And, you know, through my travels and stuff like that, you talk to a lot of different people, a lot of different customers, a lot of developers. You know, when I was the consultant at FileMaker, you know, you talk to the FBAs and, you know, you ask them what their issues were and stuff. You know, and there's a bunch of guys, you know, we're all getting older. They want to get out of this business, right? Or they want to know how they can get out, or how they can sell the you know, what they've built in the past and stuff like that. So, you know, this was a big question, right? How do you get out, right? The successful people that I've talked to, you know, in the past, right? Not on the FileMaker side, but just in general, in terms of customers or buddies or people that I know through golf and stuff like that, you know, at the golf club, you know, what do you do, and what, you know, how did you get out and stuff like that. The things that they don't do is they don't get attached to things. What they do is they try and build something and they want to offload it. They sell it and then they move on to the next thing. Okay, so they don't get personally attached to things. So, you know, you sit there and you think, okay, if I build something, I got to be able to let it go, because there's going to be another opportunity out there. And my world right now, I have a ton of opportunity, right? There's another project or another type of project or whatever like that. I don't have to be doing the FileMaker stuff. So the thing is, how do I get the money or all that investment that I put into whatever I have, and can I sell it? So as a developer, what do you really have if you think about it, right? Okay, and if you think about a lawyer or anybody in the services industry, it's usually the knowledge that you actually have, right? You might have built a bunch of solutions and stuff like that, but the thing is, do you own it or does the customer own it, right? Okay, now if you have an SBA solution, or you built out an application or something, then you might have something that's sellable. But, you know, the normal formula when they're evaluating a business is going to be something like, you know, 5 to 7 or 10 times the annual revenue, right? Or, you know, the total assets of the business and stuff. And then there's some goodwill that's put into it, right? But the thing is, as independent developers, you know, what is that, what's that number that you can say this is what the business is worth, right? Now, there's another scenario where we had a developer in the Toronto area who got into an accident and he passed away, unfortunately. I'm not going to mention the name, but
Yes.
when that happened, you know, his whole customer base started to go out, right, and started looking for, you know, other developers, right? And I'm sure, you know, a bunch of you guys out there picked up a couple of the customers and stuff like that. So you come to the realization that, okay, if you weren't really there, right, you know, the customer is going to go find somebody, you know, to deal with it, right? You know, they're going to go to Filemaker site and find another developer in the area, and then they're going to take over the project and stuff like that. So unless you lock all the code up and stuff, you know, you really don't have a lot of stuff that you can say this is a tangible component, and you know, here you can go and sell it. I have another customer that she's trying to get out of her business. She's in manufacturing, and when she went to try and sell it, the issue was the business was really her and the two people in the company. And the consultant said, you really don't have any processes in place that you could say, you know, this guy could step in and take over the business. So you as an independent, you know, if you stopped working, or, you know, could you have somebody come into your shoes and take over the business, right? Okay. So the thing is, you know, the skills that you have are really not transferable, right? You know, there's guys out there that train the developers and stuff, and they bring them, or they try and teach them the skills and stuff like that. But do they have the skills of going out and finding the customers, or you know, being able to sell them on using, you know, the services? You know, each of you guys have your own skill sets and stuff, and you pick up jobs based on, you know, the different intangible things that you bring to the table. Your nice smile, the way you look, things like that, right? You know, I've seen scenarios with a couple of platinum developers where they start training these junior developers. They pick up half the skill set, and next thing you know, they take their largest customer or one of their customers, and you know, next thing you know, there's a lawsuit happening and stuff like that, right? So, you know, again, you can transfer it to a degree, but, you know, selling it is a hard thing to do, right? So I talked about the other developers. So the recurring revenue model, right? Can you build something that you have, let's say, a monthly revenue stream, okay, that you can then say to somebody that's looking to buy the business and say, yeah, this is my revenue stream. I you know, pull in 15,000 a month in just straight billings, because this is the software as a service that, you know, you've built up over the year through whatever the applications are and stuff like that, or, you know, the app that you're building out. Now, once they have that, and then you look and you extrapolate in terms of where you can take it, you know, there's probably some goodwill that comes from there, and then it's something that you could actually sell. And if you set everything up properly, they could probably step in, because, you know, you have the solutions or the processes in place that they could take over, and then you can step out, right? Okay. So timing. I don't think you could have done this a couple of years back. You know, there's a bunch of SBA guys out there. I know, Mark, you have your florist thing, right? You know, you focus strictly on that. You know, and there's again, it's a service just like, you know, any of the other guys buying an application. The reason why I say it's hard to do that, or it was harder to do it 2 years ago, was the customers, they just weren't used to it. Now, most customers are used to paying an annual renewal fee for their Adobe licenses or their Microsoft Office suite, FileMaker, for example, things like that. So they've sort of been trained by the big manufacturers, right? So now, if you could do, or you turn your model into something that's monthly or yearly, then they're more likely to say yes to it. Okay, so one of the things that you got to start thinking about is are there things that I can do that you can get a monthly revenue or yearly revenue from the customer base, okay, as opposed to trying to charge them all up front, and then you sort of don't hear from them, right? So the different model is, an example is, and this is something that I'm using right now with this existing solution, is we charge them a base price of 25 to 50 a month, right? Okay, and then there's a $5 a head user fee. Okay, so if you have 40 guys in the company, then it's 40 times 5 plus the 25 to 50 for the use of the application. Okay, and then the other piece, and that's just for like a base system. So they get 2 simple reports, they have access, and then if they need the extra pieces, those are all add-ons. So we don't charge for, like, let's say they want the integration in QuickBooks, right? Or they need, SMS reminders or something like that. Those are extra pieces. So we add like additional fees on top of it. And then once we've built the model, like I've been replicating this for other customers. So when I started working with Charles on this, right, on the onboarding call, we literally built the app in like, 2 hours, right? Like half of the app anyways in 2 hours. And then after a couple of other sessions, the app was up and running. And then all I've been doing is focusing and pushing it into to other customers and stuff like that, right? Okay, so we build it out simple. Now, I'm not charging a lot up front for it, but the thing is, because the service is critical to their business, they're going to get tied up for you or tied into you for the next, let's say, couple of years, right? And if I go back to my development of all these solutions that I've done in the past, the ones where I've charged them something monthly or yearly, those customers are still with me. And I have customers from 2000. So you're talking, what, 18 years. So back then, what I did was I charged these guys a $600 a year support maintenance, let's say, contract. Okay, and back in 2000, for all the old guys, not the young guys, right? The cell phones were starting to come out, and I came up with this $50 a month charge, right? Charge the customers just to pay for the cell phone bills, because back then the cell phone charges were like astronomical, right? But these customers have been paying me for the last 18 years this $700 charge every year, right? You send out the bill, and you sort of get this revenue coming through. Now, all these customers that I've done this for, they are still with me. The guys that I never got to charge them anything, they've either disappeared or they've gone, gotten out of Filemaker. They could have gone to other developers or whatever like that. But the thing is, if you hook them in somehow through something, you're gonna stay in touch with them, right? You're gonna have these guys for forever. So when I think about that, these new guys that I'm bringing on, they're gonna be using the service. It's gonna be something that they're gonna be there for the next, 5-10 years potentially, right? Because for some reason, it's funny. The reason these guys that I'm dealing with now, they've been doing this. The way they're doing this process, they've been doing it for the last 10-15 years, and they don't change. So we're bringing in a new process, and that they're going to probably stick with for the next 5-10 years, right? So it's a perfect scenario to build up the stream, and then hopefully I can get out of it and sell it at one point, right? Okay, and again, that's the scenario. SBA example. One of the things that I did after leaving FileMaker was I built out a pretty interesting solution that handles services industry on the HVAC and air conditioning side. So when I went to apply for the SBA, I didn't submit it as HVAC plumbing only. I put it in there as HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and anything that had to do with that type of on-the-road service, right? Because if you think about the application, all of those services sort of work the same way, right? The only thing that really changes is the parts and the billing codes that happen. But most of the stuff that they do is very similar, right? And the reason why I bring that point up is that you got to start thinking about your apps and not pigeonholing them so that they only work with one type of company. Okay. So make the sucker simple, right? And then if a guy wants additional stuff, add those components, but take that simple app and apply it to other industries, right? So, another example, I built out a POS system, right, on an iPad, right? Now I haven't had time to finish it, but again, the POS system that I have, you can apply it to just about any customer, right? Because it's built generically to the point where it doesn't matter what the products are and stuff. If they want the extra features, you add it in, right? Again, it takes time to roll this stuff out and go find the customers, and it's just another example of something that you can you take your apps and don't try and make them so custom that they're sort of like stuck to this one customer because that's the way they operate and stuff like that. Start scaling them back so that they become much simpler, right, in terms of the way they work and stuff like that. Automate the demo. This is the next thing that I'm sort of working with this app. This app that Charles helped me with when we started this, I brought on 15 guys in this model, and they started right away and started paying. And then I picked up another 8, and then another 35. The 35 could turn into 1,000 users, and then I just literally have another 100 potentially coming on another guy, and then another 1,000 on another company, right? But every one of those, I had to go in and show them the demo, okay, which takes a freaking lot of time, right? So if you can automate the demo, then you can just send them to the site. They could try it, and if they can get all their questions answered there, then it'll be the simple ones like hooking into QuickBooks, hooking into Simply Accounting, or into another system or whatever like that. That they might say, well, what about this or that? And those are the things that you can answer. But the base component gets taken care of, right? Okay. So if you can do that, then it's going to help a big time, because you only have so much time. Like I have very little time, right, in that sense, right? Okay. So this is not a thing that is anything against Filemaker, but again, web apps are probably much better, okay, if you can build the solution out using this technology as opposed to a custom app through FileMaker Go or a client through FileMaker and things like that. There's a lower overall cost in a lot of respects in terms of not having to pay for the licenses. If you do build out custom apps, right, where you have a FileMaker Go or even an iOS app or an Android app or a BlackBerry app, you have to deal with all of the upgrades. So anytime there's an OS upgrade, you got to deal with upgrading those apps and stuff like that, which is a huge cost. Now, you could charge the customer for it, but the thing is, why do you need to, like, what's that revenue stream going to be like, on that upgrade, right? And then, what if you can't deal with some of the OS changes and stuff like that? So there's costs like that. Now, if anybody's developed an iOS app, once you stick that iOS app in the App Store, you're liable, or you technically, or part of the Apple agreement is you got to upgrade it, okay, whenever they release a new OS, right? Because I've had 2 apps in the App Store. So anytime they come up with an update, you got to deal with the update. Okay, otherwise you're going to have issues with with Apple. Security, you can control what's going on the website. When you do an update, it's instant because it's done through your one server. There's less support because you don't have to deal with all the different platforms. I already mentioned the lower licensing, and if you look at the rest of the internet, a lot of the apps out there are set up this way, right? Okay, they're not using these load FileMaker Go first, then load the app on top of that. It's sort of like this, workaround sort of thing, right? And the one thing that really that hooked me onto Charles's platform, and this was the thing that I was wrestling with was how do you scale it? So if you're in FileMaker, you know that scaling your app is very hard to do. Okay, if you have to deal with a lot of connections or multiple servers and things like that, it's not the best platform for that. When Charles showed me what he did in terms of how he scales this platform, that was the thing that sort of hooked me right into it. Right, I was sitting there going, okay, he took care of one of the major issues I'm gonna have to deal with this app, and that's the ability to scale it. Okay, so if if Charles hasn't talked to you about it, you want to take a look at it. I'm not stuck on FileMaker anymore. It's just one of those things that you got to realize, and just like my customers that where they're saying don't get emotionally involved with the business or whatever it is. Build it out, sell it, and move on to the next thing, right? Okay. So my thing is, I got to look at platforms that can deliver the things that I can deliver to my customer base, right? Okay. As we're all in FileMaker. It's been a great platform for a number of different things. Use it for whatever you need, but for if you want to get into some of the stuff where there's like a lot of customers that get into your stuff, right, from a platform standpoint. There's other things out there, right? This is a whole different discussion, right? That you can get into with, whatever ones you want to talk about, anyways, right? So I'm using again another platform that can address, the other markets that FileMaker can't address, right? Okay, because it's not. It's not about FileMaker. It's about the app and what you can deliver to the customer, and can I actually make that into a revenue stream? So in my very first slide, I had, or the second slide, I said other revenue streams in terms of other, right? So if you think about the monthly revenue that you can bring to the table that you might get from your customers, right? It could be a number of different things like hosting, whatever, FileMaker hosting, email, the FileMaker licenses and things like that. The thing is that your customers are used to paying monthly or yearly, okay? And I'm going to leave this tidbit for you to think about. So if you have a customer that's paying their $1,000 to FileMaker for the licenses, okay, and they're constantly just doing their annual renewal, right? What if you changed the app to something that didn't require FileMaker, and you still charge the customer the $1,000, right? So just food for thought. Okay, and there's ways of doing it. Anyways, so question, thoughts. That's the end of my slides.
That was great, David. Thank you. So basically, it seems like you've started off with just taking an existing client and really selling them in a SaaS kind of model, but not have all the SaaS marketing and all the SaaS subscription and all the infrastructure that has to go with it. You just kind of brokered a user fee that's comparable or better than what they're paying, and more or less took the business away from whatever they were using currently. Is that right?
Yes. Well, that was the second customer. Okay. Well, no, sorry, the third one. So how I got into it was the first one. I did something, and because you're able to usually cut things down in developing something new, just like Dan, right? Take away all the forms and stuff like that. You simplify the process and stuff. So in the first case, I cut a process that was 2 days down to 20 minutes, right? So that was like a huge selling point. So you go into the next customer and you ask them their flow, and they basically,
yeah. So I think that's pretty typical of all FileMaker,
right,
if you will.
Then But then the thing was, okay, can I get this customer to pay monthly instead, right? And when you actually present it that way, they said, sure, no problem. And then you pick up the second one. So you start doing that, and it's like, so now I'm up to like potentially by the end of this year, I could be up to 2,000 something customers.
Right, which is a nice recurring nest egg. Well,
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, I'm just gonna jump over to Eric here. And oops.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm just gonna make you the presenter there, Eric.
All right.
I met Eric at DevCon this year, and we met in one of the food room, whatever you want to call that. And I gave him a quick demo of BetterForms, and while I'm going through the demo, he's saying, "Oh, do you just do this and do you just do that?" And it's like I'm thinking, has he seen this before? Because you kind of gravitated or you kind of picked up things like right away. So we can see your screen, so I'll let you take it away there. What have you built?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I talked about when I was meeting you. One of my goals at DevCon this year was to find that solution to WebDirect, and I was talking to everybody trying to figure out, well, you can do this JavaScript integration into FileMaker, but you still can't scale WebDirect, and you can't all these features. It doesn't run still as fast. And so my biggest issue has always been speed. And so for the program I was developing for my work here, my users just, they weren't able to actually use it as well because the WebDirect the speed wasn't there. And anyway, so a little bit of background, I guess, to start. I work at Huntington University in the Arizona location, which we focus on a digital media arts program. So we teach basically film classes, is one of our main programs. And what I've built here is the reservation system for all of our studios, rooms, and equipment. So the students can check out equipment, reserve it, and then take it out and practice with it, make their films. And so, yeah, I've been using BetterForms to kind of rebuild that. And it's not quite launched yet to all the students, but I've got a few that are helping me kind of test it and make sure. But there is a lot of logic built into it. Like I think Paul was saying, so let's see where else to start. I don't know.
So this app, basically, it is a resource tracker. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So you've kind of, I noticed
Exactly.
you've kind of changed some themes here. You've added some logo and some styling and stuff like that in the top corner.
Right.
And
and all these buttons, nice picker interfaces.
Right.
I'm still working on that issue, I guess, but
I'll fix that, huh?
Oh yeah, there's always things we
right now. So the existing app that this is sitting in front of was a WebDirect app, or was it just?
It was just a WebDirect. I had built it in FileMaker, and I can show my FileMaker app too. But in the FileMaker app, it was just ported over to WebDirect. It wasn't really built for WebDirect, right, which I know probably would have helped a lot with the speed. But FileMaker, I'm technically an in-house developer, but still, even then, FileMaker isn't my full-time job. So to be able to port something over to this web platform was super, super useful. Because now, as you're going through, I can even I'll go back to the reservations view. And as an admin on the system, I can view everybody's reservations.
There's the demo gods right there.
There we go. And so to be able to search, just to be able to search and have these things update, I can see everybody's orders all at once, and then just to click on one. Even within FileMaker, I would say this web app right now is currently faster than my FileMaker system, which I'm working on, improving. A lot of that has to do with how the backend is set up, of course, in FileMaker.
Right.
But the fact that I can pull all this from FileMaker and push it back, preloading the content so that the web page seems snappy, but when you hit save or when you click a button like this, like the add items button, this script does take a while, but that's okay because you give the users a little bit of
Right.
context
So
as to why it's taking a while.
there's a few
Yeah.
concepts in user interface design that you can start to look at. One of them is called optimistic, like an optimistic workflow or optimistic saving. And you see that a lot on social media sites when you click the plus icon or the heart icon or the like. And there's an animation, so you think it happened instantly, but really the API is taking a half a second to make the call. And it's going under the auspices that that function or that workflow is probably gonna go okay, and there's not going to be any errors. So some of those things we haven't really talked too much about, and I don't have any instructional videos at the moment on that. But that is a concept that we can definitely incorporate with BetterForms, and that gives the user a big perception of things happening faster.
Right, exactly. And so even like with this interface, I can click on this select item and it looks like it's selected. And this is, it's easy. You can pick through your stuff, you can search for it. But until I click add, that's not when it's actually committed at that point back to the database. So again, it's all about the perception of speed too, which is so huge. And so then obviously I've built out a few more tabs here with the other preferences. So rebuilding it, and the point here was to build the full web app and not just a few forms. That was kind of one of the hardest pieces to wrap my mind around too, is that you have BetterForms is built kind of like a forms engine, and a lot of people use it for, or even a lot of form services, they might use it for just basic filling out a form. But you can do anything with it. Like Charles always mentions, the whole admin interface is built using.
Yeah. So that's kind of the proof of concept there.
Right.
So
that's your proof of concept. I'm just trying to add to it.
in terms of skill set, what did you find that you had already done some web development with things before a little bit? I know you said you did some Python stuff and.
Yeah, actually, well, before BetterForms, I was trying to basically build this same kind of system using like a Python API server, just because I've done a little bit of Python stuff. I'm relatively new to FileMaker too. I mean, only just a few years with FileMaker, and coding is not my background. My background was in media, but I fell into FileMaker and coding in general, whether it be through Python or HTML, a little bit of JavaScript. And so again, I was trying to build all this myself, but in order to connect it to FileMaker with the data API, it was just way too much customized stuff. And just like David was talking about, I can't do the software as a service. Like my apps are becoming way too custom to one specific thing, and so I couldn't even scale them to feature other pages,
Right. So,
but that's
do you feel, where do you feel that you need, in terms of as a platform, we could add the ability to have more customization in certain things? Because we can customize CSS from top to bottom. You can have more or less custom widgets in the sense of HTML if you want to go that way. But I
mean, I think you're definitely heading in the right direction with the card windows. I don't know if I have a good example of where I'd want to use that, but it's not on this page. There's also a lot of buttons here that are hidden because they're all context sensitive. But yeah, like a card window within here would be super helpful because you can have a different, same way with FileMaker, you have that different context to put in different data. And then being able to customize this navigation bar. So eventually, like if I can check a user and see, maybe they don't need access to the student directory, or maybe they want access to a whole nother page, I can show or hide those items depending on
the new conditional calculations you can add on that will basically allow you to set almost kind of like sets, if you will, because you can have it conditional based on some type of data point.
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm looking at, obviously, with the changes that I know you're coming out with soon.
Those just got
But
deployed
yeah, and
yesterday or the day before, one of the two. So that ability, the
okay,
documentation
yeah,
not deployed just yet though. Can we see that
very cool.
the invoice one that you showed me the other day? It was that looked kind of neat. And
Yeah,
how does that fit into
I'll
the
show
plan?
that one too. So that was, yeah, this we actually finally, this actually went live full production like yesterday. Sent out some new invoices. So another thing we do is we rent out to the community. So this is actually the same FileMaker system on the back end, but we've now pushed it to our own domain, and so it generates the invoice, pulling in everything from FileMaker, and then it also directly integrates the credit card form that we have set up so that you can pay. And then this actually
Right. So
runs
that credit
an
card
API
form,
webhook on the
that's
back
not
end.
BetterForms, right? So everything else here is BetterForms, but
This,
there's an iframe or something there.
yeah. So what I had to do here was an iframe to a form stack form because that's where my company wants all the credit cards to go through. They've already got an integration with FormStack.
Right. So it's already.
But I really love how I was not able to. I didn't have to compromise. I can still use FileMaker to load the rest of this data, and I even use FileMaker to generate this HTML just with some text replacement, and then it loads the FormStack form and pre-fills like this. I didn't do this. It pre-fills all the address and the name and stuff, so that when a customer clicks on their email to view their invoice, pulls up this page, and then all they have to do is enter their credit card information, and then it even updates with FileMaker on the back end.
That was a custom spinner there that I just saw that. That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat. And then when they submit the payment, that payment gets submitted via the FormStack gateway.
Right. And so the FormStack form has a
webhook.
webhook feature. Yeah, there's a webhook feature there that actually calls back into FileMaker and runs a script that updates the payment, adds a payment record for the invoice.
Right.
So
that's pretty neat. Now, how would the user get to this page here? Is that through an email link? Or is that just through a link on somewhere else?
Yeah, there's an email link. Yeah, there's no login on this page either.
Right.
And then we built a statement page where if they have multiple invoices, you can prepay custom amounts, and it's all responsive there. So if org says, hey, don't pay more than you owe,
Yeah, I totally get rid of that.
And then you just click the
Let
button.
them pay more. So that looks really
We're a nonprofit, so
yeah. It's what I like there, Eric. What you've done there is I can't really tell where one technology starts, another technology stops. I mean, there's I guess 3 or 4 technologies. Right? You have FileMaker in the back end, BetterForms in the front, and then
yeah, exactly.
your legacy FormStack payment gateway.
Yeah.
Actually, another thing that's going to be coming, we just started working on is an authorized.net payment gateway. And that's probably about 20% built for people who are looking for that. We already have currently 2 other payment gateways. There's PayPal and Stripe, which are really, really super easy to integrate. Basically, just add an API.
Right. Yeah, I wish we could have done it native, but unfortunately, that's just how.
You know what?
I would say
if you have something that's existing, that's functional, and the workflows are all there, why not just integrate it? There's,
Sure.
until you can't do that anymore, then you make the change. But I think if something's not broke, I don't, I'm okay with not fixing it.
Right. So yeah, that's all what this is. And these are only just a couple little things, but it's definitely changed. The way we've built this invoice. I used to build. I can't even show you because we took it down now that we've migrated it. But I used to build all these pages. The HTML or the invoice page was built in like a custom HTML.
Well, that's painful.
In the Python API. So.
Yeah, that's pretty painful because when you want to even just to add another field, then it can be a bit of a nightmare.
Right.
So just to recap, so you're using a data table on the bottom for the invoices. That's what I've seen where it says screen and special.
This is actually a custom HTML table.
Okay, so you built the table. So I can't.
There's no interactivity here.
Even though architected the framework.
Yeah, actually, all of these elements up here are still HTML.
Right.
But that's okay. So you're not editing this.
So how did you find just to preface this? BetterForms is based on a JavaScript framework called Vue.js, and that's just a rendering engine. It basically takes care of things like iteration loops and merging things, and it makes things live. So if you have a data field in one spot,
Right.
it's live or it's connected, or the proper term is reactive somewhere else. And so what Eric's done here is he's used a custom HTML component, which is not really, it may look really complicated, but it's exceptionally simple. It's probably about 12 lines or something like that to make that table. And using Vue.js. Now, did you find, was that hard to learn? Because you're kind of, I'm not pushing the envelope by any means of BetterForms, but you're using sort of more advanced features.
Yeah, no, I think Vue is pretty easy to learn. I might even be able to pull up I don't know which one it is here, or if it's even here. But I've done just little things like this where you can,
Right. So that's,
you can
so
look
there
in,
you
like
go.
the
That's a really
HTML
good
code here
example
is
there.
really simple.
Yeah, very, very simple. It's very
Yeah.
readable as well.
Yeah, this was just an example, but
I was on
I basically built it in here and copied it, so same deal.
Right. And basically what Vue does, the Vue code that's in there are those things inside the curly braces, which is just a fancy merge. It's just merging some data. And then there's an iterator, that's the V-4. You may have heard of React. React is a reactive JavaScript framework produced by Facebook. React is kind of works a little bit different than Vue in the sense of React is JavaScript with HTML stuck inside it, whereas Vue is HTML with JavaScript kind of stuck inside. And Vue you can use very little if you want. Like in that particular case, it's using very, very little bit. So there's the source data there, right? It's a data object, and you got one array called line items, and then each line item has 3 keys. And then can we go back to the editor again, just to see how you built that out? Now, you don't have to build things out. I should say you don't have to build things out like this. You can just put this in a data table if you want. But you want a little bit more fidelity and more control, then you're not going to be stuck with the opinion of the data table, even though you can customize it quite a bit.
Right, because now I can add, a class text right and make it all right aligned or something.
Yeah, exactly. So. And I think
it kind of just depends I would say it depends on your comfort level with HTML. Like if I had enough comfort level with HTML that, I didn't mind building it out like this. But the data tables that are provided, native in Vue or BetterForms, they're perfectly fine for almost anything you need.
Yeah. So the kind of the philosophy of BetterForms as a platform is to not have too much opinion and to give the developer. I kind of go overboard a little bit sometimes with my own style of coding. I like to keep things really hyper flexible within reason. And by doing it, by allowing you to do this, even just this little workspace here, this tool that he's using is actually reactive. So if he types on the left, you'll see it change on the right. And that's all totally built in BetterForms as well, this entire interface. And so you can see what's happening there. And I think when you do that, it makes a lot of flexibility, because even though when we were first developing this with Dan, and actually 2 Dans, another Dan, I don't know if he's still online, he was on there earlier. Yes, he is. We were developing this with 3 people sort of around about the same time. And sometimes people say, well, can you just add this one little thing that would just meet my use case? And it's like, no, I can't add it like that, even though that would take maybe 5% of the time that it would take to add this entire feature, because then it locks your code in. So if you're ever writing code that has, and it doesn't matter what the language, what the platform is, if you're writing code that is going to be kind of somewhat open source, it's really good to keep that mentality in mind, that it keeps things super, super flexible. So.
Right.
Did you have to do much customizing in the CSS for this?
What was it? What was that?
Did you have to do a lot of CSS customization?
For the invoice page, I did, but I really was just copying. I copied the CSS that I had already done in my other pages, really, so it wasn't a lot of work in my case. So I think obviously if you're asking for feature requests, and you already know this, but like the HTML editor embedded into a form editor.
Yeah. Once I think that'll be part of
a
feature that'll come with the card window. So I think that'll be a really good thing.
Cool.
So super, Eric. That's great. That looks really, really nice. Like it's it kind of doesn't look like it's a framework underneath there. Like that's your goal. So
Right, exactly. Don't need to bog the user down with any of those details.
Yeah, exactly. Super. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just switch back here quick. We'll finish up. There we go. All right. So that's a couple things. A couple things we're going to finish up with today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Somebody made a good suggestion in the chat, and it's to use for Eric, instead of the invoice number in the smart link, use a unique ID so it's not guessable and most likely not sequential. But I think you can probably change that easy enough, and you can actually
I can
use a combination of the two of them if you still want something that's readable. You can concatenate another query parameter on there, and then just pick that out in your script, just to from an authentication aspect.
Yeah, the way my invoices numbers at work, they're not actually that sequential. So because there's so many random ones, and not all of the numbers turn into invoices, but that still might be a change I'll make.
Yeah, I guess the worst case scenario, I mean, you always, whenever you're designing anything that runs outside of your infrastructure, you always have to look at the user as a hacker and malicious. So it's always good to every script call, everything, to always be checking authentication constantly. Couple things I'm just going to finish up with really, really quick. Our VIP program is still available at $6.99 for the year. It's a yearly subscription, and it gives you unlimited apps, unlimited sites, users, and layouts. The one caveat is it can be used for a single vertical, or alternately for a single vertical market app. So that means if you're doing something that like what Dave was building there, that would be a single app that he would do, even though he's using it for multiple clients. It's still considered a single one. So that's the way that works. If you want to, if you're interested in that, you can visit vip.fmbetterforms.com, or just go to the site at FMBetterForms, and there's some links there as well. And a couple other things. If you need to contact myself or anybody, have any questions about anything that we talked about today, please, by all means, you can get a hold of me at if you actually just Google my last name. I think I usually come up first, most places. So that's that, and I think that's all for today. We're a little bit over time, but I really appreciate everybody coming out. We lost a few people, probably got hungry or something like that. And if you have any questions, by all means, we'll kick around for the next few minutes, and feel free to type them in or to jump, raise your hand. All right, thanks for coming, Peter and Roy. Louis, actually, while you're still on there, I just want to quickly, because it's a bit of a plug, but Louis here, who's part of our group, has a product that it's an interface connector, and it's something that I think everybody could pretty much use. Louis, did you want to just, if you want, I can just switch you over. You want to talk about FM Buddy? That's your call.
Sure. Why not? Hey, everybody.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. This is awesome, by the way. Super cool stuff. It's awesome to see what people are doing with it. Really just kind of got me invigorated with it. Thank you for the plug. I have been working on a product called FM Buddy with a friend of mine. I think he's on the call as well. His name's Eden. And it is kind of the reverse of what you see here, whereas we're really focused on the back end and what you can do integrating with your FileMaker server. FM Buddy is designed to be an API abstraction layer. So you interact with an API in one particular way, and we abstract that out to many different types of APIs and give you kind of real-time updating on your FileMaker server.
What would be an example of like where I could use that?
I think the coolest example we have at the moment is Twilio SMS. You can send and receive messages from a FileMaker app using Twilio, and then just instantly like set your status to away or trigger a particular action.
Right. So you don't really have to. So me as a developer, I don't really have to know too much about the API and about connecting.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to know anything about the Twilio API. You only need to know how we connect to it. And then when you work with FM Buddy, we actually give you the FileMaker scripts that take the action. So you have everything that you need just by installing it. to actually start interacting with a service like Twilio. And if you want to dive deeper and see what's under the hood, you could just start modifying the scripts.
What's your URL for that, Lee?
fmbuddy.com.
With a Y?
Yep.
Super. Right. I think this is actually a really neat idea. I love this idea. And if I wasn't building something, I'd want to build it myself. Basically, the time it takes us to do integrations, it's not worth it. Like it's as a mentor always says to me, Charles, that's a false economy. When I start suggesting, hey, I'm going to build this or I'm going to build that, he reminds me and kind of keeps me in track. And I realize it's not worth building something that somebody else they do for their bread and butter and they eat it for breakfast. So this is great. So you got Dropbox integration, Twilio, Google. What else?
We have developer tools, which is they'll always be free, by the way. Anyone can use those. Things like doing array manipulation or XML manipulation.
Oh, so this is kind of like the function as a service. Is that kind of what's going on there?
Yes, exactly. You can think of it as like replacing some custom functions with just HTTP calls.
Right.
Which allows us to do really deep and robust regex calls if you need them. Things like sorting, filtering of data.
Don't forget file system access. This is Eden.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's my colleague Eden. We also just added full file system access, so you can, from your FileMaker server, you can grab a file, move a file, compress a file, download, upload, and we're currently working on data migration as well. So you can
right. So I could, if I wanted to build an open source data migration tool that the community could contribute to, I could use that as a framework in the back end. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yes. Beautiful. Brilliant. Yep. So
this
is exactly the opposite end of BetterForms. FileMaker sits in the middle. BetterForms sits on the one side, the UI side, and this sits on the integration side for the most part.
Yep. That's a great way to put it. I love it.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool, guys. I just want to mention that because I saw you in Louis. He's a brilliant developer, and it's kind of neat to introduce people from our community as we kind of tighten the loop a little bit there.
Well, thank you very much. Your check's in the mail.
Just a quick question.
Yeah, certainly.
Two API possibilities in my world have come up for Magento and Shopify, which would be online shopping carts, essentially. How would FMBuddy potentially help do an integration between FileMaker and one of those, or am I out of bounds here?
I can't say that we've looked at shopping carts yet. It is something that I guess we could look at in the future. The thing with shopping carts that might be a little tricky is that they generally have their own schema that they want you to adhere to. What FMBuddy does is kind of abstract out any API schema into a schema that you choose. So that would get a little weird, you know. For instance, like just to give you an example, Dropbox has a dot file type, and it's literally dot file. And of course, you can't do that in FileMaker, so you can rename that file to whatever else you might want to call it. That would get a little tricky when it comes down to shopping carts because they generally have a very defined schema. But it's something we're happy to look at.
Okay. Well, thanks for your thoughts.
Yeah, super.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think that is that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thank you very much. We do have other meetups and things like that. Some of them are closed for our VIP group that is more training oriented and new and upcoming things. But by all means, you can join our Slack group. It's fmbetterforms.slack.com, and there's a link. There's an auto sign up link just to keep an eye on what's going on if you're not part of the group. And that's in the email that you would have gotten today. So once again, thank you very much. And we're going to record this. We'll probably post it out and send it in a follow-up email as well. Okay. All right. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend, everybody.